Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Nabel J. Lee, and welcome into a new Buzzcast here at Buzzworthy Radio. This episode dove into something very serious that I didn't realize I would be comfortable enough to talk about on my show, but it's a topic that we don't talk about enough. I had the pleasure of being joined by Fran Metzman, and she is the writer of the Amazon bestseller, The Cha Cha Babe, and the second book in the series, called The Cha Cha Babes Dance with the Devil, deals with the topic of human trafficking. And again, it's not a subject that gets talked about enough. And it's also a subject that's not easy to bring up the majority of the time. And we spent a good majority of our time talking about this and potentially what we can do in order to stop human trafficking, whether it and we dove into even more than just human trafficking. We talked about sex trafficking, drug trafficking, you name it. It all was discussed in this show, and it really it really opened up a door to be able to use this as a space to talk about this topic. So I encourage you all to please listen to it, and also just think about if you are ever in that situation where you notice this happening, what you can do to help prevent it. Here's our interview with Fran Metzman.
Before I even start this, I have to ask, did you feel the earthquake today?
I did not. I'm on the 20th floor of a building, but my neighbor who faces another direction did feel it. And someone about 12 minutes away also felt it like a boom, but no shaking. So, yeah, we're only an hour and a half drive to New York. So
Yeah, I
it's,
so I'm literally yeah, I literally live in Jersey, South Jersey, so not that far from
oh,
home. And so I was sitting at my computer, I was on my laptop, and then I just felt the house move. And the house moved, and I'm my first initial thought of it was a truck ran by, like a big garbage truck or something. Like I'm thinking, oh, it's a truck. Because sometimes when the truck drives by my street, sometimes the house vibrates, but not to the point where I'm feeling the whole house shake to where my bed moved.
geez.
So then I looked at so then as soon as it stopped shaking, I was like, I heard no truck. So I immediately was like, that was an earthquake. There had to be an earthquake. And then sure enough, I see that it was an earthquake and it was a 4.8. And I was just like, oh, all right. So the third time on the East Coast, I've experienced an earthquake. But anytime I go to Los Angeles, I've never experienced an earthquake. But
Right.
yet here, I experienced three. So
Uh,
it was crazy just to sit there and be like, and as you, I had friends who said I didn't feel a thing, and I was going like it wasn't terrible, but it was just the idea that um it happened on the East Coast. I think that's really what my thing of it
it,
was. It wasn't
it
any,
is strange. Yeah.
it was totally off kilter. I was just like, wow. Um and it just made me think of the first time it happened when it happened in 2011, and I was in my house doing the laundry, and I was just going, oh, yeah, so that's a thing. And it happened a few years after that, and I was at work at a hospital and felt it there. And that one was a hard one where it was just like boom, like I was sitting at the desk and it just literally like pushed me into my computer, and I was just like, wow. And then today, and it's just if that didn't wake me up, that probably would have woke me up. Yeah, that's literally how
Yeah.
it.
Well, the funny thing is, I think I've gone deaf to certain sounds because I'm on the 20th floor, and if we have a big wind, I'll hear things, clacking a little bit.
Hmm.
So I guess, maybe I just kind of was, like you see through certain things. You don't see the item, you see something beyond it. That's what the sound, I think, was for me. I couldn't distinguish it.
Nice. Yeah. It was, I can deal with high winds sometimes. I can deal with heavy rain and hail. I even dealt with this today. I mean, this wasn't really anything to. any injuries came out of it or anything of the sort.
Yeah, right.
Was just more unusual is how I was looking at it. I was going, wow, because I literally had to sit there for a few minutes and go, is that what I thought it was? Not because I'm sitting here going like, we don't get these. So I'm kind of going, is that what it is? Is that what it was? And
Yeah,
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 and,
yeah.
and then it turns out it was that. And I was going like, all right, so we have an earthquake Friday, we have an eclipse on Monday. It's
Oh,
it's just it's all tying together, I think. But
and global warming to boot. Right,
and global warming and
right.
warming, yeah. What an adventurous Friday. So hopefully this is the last of the excitement on a Friday, is me talking with you. And
Good, good.
that is
Will
what I want.
explode.
That is what I want. So, Fran Metzman, I am very honored to have you sit here and speak with me about the Cha Cha Babes. And I I love the fact that when I was introduced to this story, it was introduced to me as a cross between a soap opera and the Golden Girls.
Oh, that's that was the first in a sequel. This one I'm doing now is a bit of the Golden Girls get into real trouble, either serial murders or in this instance, human trafficking. And they become their own amateur sleuths. And I wouldn't call it really a cozy mystery,
Mhm.
uh, because there's some murder, there's some violence, but overall, they're more serious kinds of topics
Yeah. And
that are my pet peeves. Yeah.
it's just interesting, when you're talking about how it's funny how you're describing it as the Golden Girls get into real trouble with like this murder mystery. And of course I'm thinking of uh the Libertine Bell episode, and they were doing the murder mystery weekend at the hotel kind of thing. But
Mm,
I did know about this story when it dealt with human trafficking, and I feel that's a topic that doesn't really get discussed often.
right.
It's definitely something that not a lot of people do want to bring to the limelight. And also mention that this is happening in our world. So what made you want to go ahead and have this be a part of the new series that you're writing for this?
A few years back, I was writing a lot of articles, and a few years back, I happened to catch some little thing about, as you said, it wasn't, and it still isn't well known. Uh, and I wrote an article about human trafficking, particularly sex trafficking,
Hmm.
because there is human trafficking is the umbrella for everything, for people bringing in children for labor, uh, people bringing in impoverished people for menial jobs, which they become imprisoned in a way. They're guarded.
Yeah.
Their money is taken from them. They have to pay for passports, food, board, which is usually some kind of a sleazy apartment. And then they are left with no money, even though they're working, 10, 15 hours a day. And they also, as far as women are concerned, they do get them on drugs so
Mm,
that they become very dependent, and they charge them for the drugs that they hook them on. So it's a terrible, terrible industry. And I've tried to think of reasons why it isn't dealt with. Now, lately, you've seen maybe three pimps who own 20 women.
yeah.
But it's really a global issue. The United States is at the one of the top importers and exporters of sex slaves,
Yeah.
not too well known.
Right.
Maybe Jeffrey Epstein opened the door a crack. Still, he wasn't global.
Right.
But it is the mafias all over the world of different countries, and they're in every country, that cooperate and trade, sell, buy women who are usually tattooed on their necks or their backs to show who their owner is.
I
I mean,
see.
it's a horrendous industry. Makes right now probably the same amount as illegal drugs. And my theory is maybe it's not valid, but the people who get involved in drugs, their children will get sometimes involved in drugs. So if they're influential, they can make a big fuss. And we know all about fentanyl now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's all the drugs are out in the open where they're coming from, how they get smuggled in.
And it gets laced with something, or they're
Right,
lacing it with something else, I should say.
right. And there are deaths of, celebrities. So it's really out in your face, the drug issue. This, I think, is protected in a way because the customers, I won't call them clients,
Okay.
but those who solicit these sex slaves are very often very high up there. They're either celebrities, politicians, very well-known politicians, lawyers, doctors. And I think that their influence, now it does sound like a conspiracy theory,
Yeah.
but I think their influence keeps it under wraps. Even high places of authorities, of say police authorities. I don't want to say police, but anyone who can do disciplinary actions.
Mm.
They bring sex slaves to major events. We don't hear about that,
Right.
whether they're concerts or athletic events, because they're customers, huge numbers of customers. We never hear about that. I ask people all the time, what do they know about sex slavery? And they'll say, oh, it's Indonesia, it's foreign countries. They have no idea it's happening here. And it's like, I guess maybe 50,000 a year are imported, and they get a huge number of children coming out of foster care when they age out of foster care. They have no skills, no jobs, no homes. They're often on the streets, and that is
Wow.
a big number.
I think it's so scary to hear, especially in those numbers. Now, when I had been first introduced into the topic of human trafficking, let alone sex trafficking, years ago, and I used to watch this show called The Real, and Jeannie Mai she was one of the hosts of the show, for those of you who don't know, and she talked about how she was always trying to help these young women, these young girls, who were involved in trafficking, and Sunny Hostin from The View, she also would talk about it. And, just for the fact that I'm only hearing it from those two that are putting in the efforts to end or try to stop trafficking. I don't want to say that it's taboo to talk about, but I feel like it's taboo to talk about with certain people, if not a lot of people. Do I think that that people think it doesn't exist? Maybe, maybe not. But it's not readily something that is brought to the forefront. Like if you're talking about racism, if you're talking about anything that is happening else globally, like what's happening in Israel and Palestine, and got the Gaza and everything of the sort, and like those types of things get talked about a lot. But yet when you have something like this, that's something that is kept, as you said yourself, under wraps. And I don't fully understand why that would be kept under wraps, because I'm looking at it going, these are young, impressionable women, young girls. It's not even women yet. They're not even women yet. Not even
Yeah,
fully developed. They're
right.
girls. They're
And
girls
children.
and
And
children.
children. Yeah.
And there was a story I heard that one of the other podcasts I listened to, shout out to Mr. Ballin, he talked about, and I feel like this could have been a sex trafficking issue had this didn't happen the way this happened. There was a story that happened where this girl, she was on her Instagram, and there was this hotel that apparently sent her a message wanting her to do like a partnership with her, because I believe she was also kind of like a human creator type thing. Like she was like a innovator. I forgot what they're called, collaborator or something. Can't remember what the term was, but she was asked by this hotel had to come to them. I can't remember where it was exactly, but she said yes, we'll go, like they'll set up everything, they'll have her stay there, the comp her stay, blah blah blah. So it was supposed to be her and another girl that were supposed to go. But I guess the girl that she was going to take could not go because she got sick. So she took a guy with her instead. So they get there to this hotel, and the driver in the car comes in and picks them up. And once they're in the car, these two drivers that were in the front of the town car, they literally were just shouting. Well, one of them specifically shouted, "Where is the other girl?"
Oh.
And that's when the girl was basically telling them that the girl, I brought him here because XYZ is sick. She could not come with me, so I brought him. And they kept asking her, "Where's the other girl?" And she kept telling them that the other girl is not here. And then that's when they made them both get out of the car and they drove away.
Oh,
Um, and then the basically what it turns out is that this hotel, it's a real hotel. However, it was a fake.
uh,
It was a fake. It wasn't the real hotel's Instagram page. They have a real Instagram page, but it wasn't the actual Instagram page that reached out to her. When she was in the hotel, when she went to the desk agent, that's when she found out that this could have possibly, potentially would have been a trafficking sting, because that's when the desk agent told them that they never would reach out to anybody with a collaboration offer, et cetera, et cetera. So that's when it all kind of came into a head that if she did have the other girl with her, these men who were in this car could have potentially have taken them somewhere, probably either never to be heard from again, and something could have happened to both of them that could be, God forbid, the end of days for them. And I just heard that story when I was listening to it, and I was going like that's literally what's happening, and no one is talking about it.
yeah. Children disappear, never to be seen again. A lot of times it's for the sex trafficking scene. In foreign countries, they promise impoverished women better jobs. Well, this is what they come to. They come to servicing men 15 hours a day. And another reason I think maybe partially answers the question of why we don't hear about it. They don't go to the authorities often because they are
Mm,
told that they will be arrested for prostitution and deported. And if they do go to the authorities, they will kill their families in the homes, in their original homes, the countries of origin.
I see.
Yeah. And their lives, of course, are always in danger, but their family lives. And many times they will protect that.
They will, yeah, they don't want to put the families at risk, and
Yeah.
that's so scary to even think about, because now you're not only just protecting yourself, now you're protecting all of your loved ones that are around you because of it. So
Yeah.
it's so not bizarre. That's not the word I want to use, but it's just so enlightening, I think is the word, because I'm still hearing and learning about this, and it's just so much to the story that we don't know of what happens and what could happen if we don't pay attention. I mean, I just had a story that was local to me in Delaware. I don't know if you heard about this or not, but there was an issue. There was something that happened in Delaware in a Target where these guys literally were. I think they were going to try to take a young girl out of the Target, and it's one of those things where now I'm just sitting here going like we have to keep our eyes open because God forbid they could sneak up behind you and take you out of a store where there's uh, hundreds of people that are in here shopping, and it's just like it goes undetected.
Right.
I just it's amazing to me how much this not only gets swept under the rug, but it really does get missed by the simplest thing. I think that's really what it is for me.
Yeah, yeah. It's still a mystery of why it is kept so much under wraps. The few things that, one is evidently their families, they're heroes in a way
Yeah,
because they're protecting their families.
yeah,
And when when if they have any possible escape, doesn't matter, they're not going to go to the authorities. And that's one of the themes in this book. That it is character forward. It's about the babes. So there's some kind of bizarre humor
of
that,
course.
yeah, and part of the humor is really to keep their sanity because they have to go into hiding. They make that choice. They're kidnapped essentially by the a mob
Hmm.
who wants to make them madams, but really spying on the women to make sure they're kept under control. And so they decide, rather than when they escape, they decide they will fight for justice rather than go back to their comfy little homes in Florida, their gated
Okay.
community homes. So there is some kind of twisted, as someone said, love the book and love the twisted humor. So we'll call it twisted. Um, and their fight, it's David and Goliath story because they're trying to fight it on a more global. The ones they get involved with are Eastern European mafia, and so they make their sacrifice. So their hiding place is very bizarre and oddball, but it works for a while, and then there are a lot of secrets revealed. And but so it is character forward. The characters are very important. But I also wanted to introduce, uh, it actually, I have to tell you a funny story. The beginning of this that I described, how they get kidnapped. Well, a friend of mine and I used to go to this one upscale restaurant in a hotel, in a boutique hotel, that we would go because we liked the happy hour food and nice martini, and started to notice that these are very well dressed men in their striped suits and their expense accounts, are sitting at tables with very young women. The men are 50 to 70. The
Oh,
women are in
wow.
their, yeah, and the women are in their early 20s. So I'm thinking, okay,
Okay. Yep.
escorts, right?
Yep.
In the midst of one evening, one of the women's had dropped in her soup, and the man she was with kind of guided her to the elevator of the boutique hotel. It was right there in the bar. And she was staggering, and he was kind of pulling her. Next, another woman, a young woman, is being pulled to the elevator. And so I just started to think these women are drugged. You
Hmm.
know, these young women aren't drinking huge amounts where they pass out almost.
I
So they had to be drugged. And so about 2 weeks later, the bar closed. So I was going to say something, call the authorities, but someone beat me to it. and they closed it. So something was going on there. Oh, yeah. And another man, we were sitting at the bar and another man walked up and did one of those secret handshakes where they're handing the bartender money not to be seen.
Not to be, yep.
Yeah. So evidently, and he said, "Oh, I like Janice or whatever the name was. I'm making up a name, but do you have somebody younger?" So they were
Oh, yeah.
doing probably their own little world of sex trafficking. This is about 8 years ago, I'd
So this is
say.
fairly recent. This is not even something.
Right, right.
Wow.
Yeah. So it goes on in little corners a lot, but the big thing is from what they can estimate worldwide, it's about $150 billion. But remember, they're dealing in cash, and so the real amounts are not known. But
Hmm.
it's a huge, it kind of is on the par with drug trafficking,
Yeah.
almost the same amount of money, and we know how big that is.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I mean, and my job outside of this, my regular job deals with pharmacy, and just hearing the stories about it, even indirectly or not directly with it, it's very intense when it comes to
Yeah,
that. So it's are we able to say the word epidemic for that? I think we can.
I think so. Oh, yeah, definitely. No question about it, because but it manages to be hidden, like not well known. And, the couple of little things that happen here and there is not even a scratch on the surface. It's so huge under this veneer of, you know, uh, a, a pickup here and a rest there. So inconsequential to the big picture.
Yeah. It's it's great that you took these topics and wanted to address them in this book because it's again, as we said throughout this entire conversation, it's not talked about enough. It's not brought to the limelight enough. And we just have to keep continuing to do that. I feel like we continue to sweep it under the rug, no change will get done from it. And
Right.
I think that was one of the biggest call-outs when I initially was introduced to the book and I saw this description that this was a part of the book. I think that was one of the biggest call-outs for me because I don't hear it enough. I don't see anybody wanting to do anything about it enough. And when they do, I don't think their actions are very rewarded. I think that probably might be the best word for it.
Yeah,
It
right. Yeah, right.
I don't I
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just when even when I mentioned Sunny Hassel when she talked about in all of her efforts in wanting to stop and prevent trafficking, whether it is sex trafficking or whatever it falls into, I just didn't feel like anybody really respected that in a sense that yes, she's doing this, but I don't think people really cared about it as if they cared about other aspects of what's going on in the world. And that's just from my observation, just from noticing. And I could be wrong, but again, just from what I see, I'm not seeing anything, if that makes sense.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I congratulate you for bringing me on to talk about this subject, because as we're discussing how under the radar it is, it doesn't even rise to be detected, except minimally.
And
So
and you
yeah,
just said that perfectly because I feel that no one will pay attention to it unless it's talked about. And because that it gets swept under the rug to the point where it seems that it's non-existent, in quotes, that's why it doesn't get talked about. If it's not something that's in front of their face all the time, that's when they don't talk about it. If it's in their face all the time, that's when they'll talk about it. If it's not in front of their face all the time, it doesn't get addressed. It gets pushed to the back burner. And I feel like that's how we are as a society. And generally speaking,
Yeah,
that's
right.
how I see it, because I feel that we take everything at face value, and not everything can be taken at face value. Not everything is black and white. Not,
You
there's
got
other
that
things that are
right.
happening in our world that we're not paying attention to enough. And that's why I always say that everybody tends to look at things face value. Well, you need to look past that, because everything else behind us, you got to be observant of what's going on around you. And I think that's why it doesn't get talked about, because
Yeah.
it's not in front of their face. It's not in front of their face.
It's that gray area between black and white, the gray area that, oh, it'll go away. It doesn't exist in the
Mm-hmm.
country, maybe Eastern Europe, but it's worldwide. I mean, that's the
Worldwide.
craziness. It is definitely worldwide, and children are robbed of their childhood. They're we're talking 3 and 4 and 5 year olds,
Yeah.
9, generally 10, but little kids, they're kind of a prize. I mean, it's sickening.
It's terrible
Yeah.
to think of it that way, but unfortunately, that's how they're viewed.
Yes. Yeah, they're prizes. So I guess this is what people don't want to address. Now, I did
Mm,
get a bestseller on Amazon, so
I did
some
see that.
people are
Yeah.
reading it. Yes, yeah. So, uh, you know, because some of the comments are, it was, you know, uh, it was intriguing,
Hmm.
but also enlightening.
Right.
They felt like they really learned something. And that was really my intention, part of it. But of course, the
Yeah.
characters, have their main place. These are the ones who, tried for justice. But they were definitely, people were really surprised at how much they learned. It was very heavily researched, and I did interviews with people who know about, a psychologist who dealt with a lot of victims.
Yeah.
He helped a lot of victims. Somebody who knows the ports and how the X-raying of these
Wow.
canisters,
Yeah.
where the women come in these canisters, uh, the ones they pile up on ships, containers,
Hmm.
metal containers. And so I guess they're able to slip some through. The X-raying of these containers is not consistent. Not everyone gets an X-ray. So I guess you can manage to get a lot of these containers through. Otherwise, we would be reading about, oh, container at port blah blah, it
Yeah.
contained 50 women, packed into a container or some such. We never hear that. But that's a very big way for them to transport women, is by these huge container ships,
Yeah.
like the one that just went into the Baltimore.
Isn't that,
It's
oh,
horrible.
that was so
Oh,
awful.
oh, that terrible, terrible. But I can't look at a container ship without thinking, are there women in there?
Were there any women or young girls or children in that
Yeah.
container on that ship?
Yeah, or any container ship, not that one
Not
necessarily.
not one particularly, but any of them that,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it would have been revealed, I think, if they were, because
it
these
would have.
people,
Yeah, it
because
would
they've
have.
been on the authorities have been through these ships and things. So, but that's a major way of transporting. Trucks, uh, planes. It doesn't matter. Railroad, buses,
Hmm.
and often you'll see an older man, he could be in his 30s, but older than the women that they're with.
Yeah.
Uh the the victims usually look malnourished,
Mm.
not well dressed, and don't speak and don't look you in the eye. And the one they're with, they'll call daddy, or they'll call their brother, but they won't
To try to
really.
kind of not throw it off, but kind of not wanting to, God forbid, if they try to say anything to want to save themselves.
Yeah, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're in trouble. So it's a huge, huge problem. And I don't think because of the money involved, it's going away anytime soon. Unfortunately, these women are, they consider better than drugs because drugs you need to keep getting a new amount. These women can be kept for very little money uh, as an
Right.
ATM machine,
Right.
constantly making money, forced, and they are definitely captives.
And it's
So
just, as you said, this Stephen, I just can't imagine what kind of brutality they would go through when this happens to them, because I just immediately think like once they're captive, once they're enslaved, they can do whatever they want with them. They could even pawn them off onto someone else.
they
And
sell
they could
them.
do, and as you just said, they sell them, and then they get to do whatever they want to do with them. And it's just, it's such a vicious cycle. And
Uh,
and the worst part of it is, which is what you just said, I don't see this ending.
yeah. Not when there's this much involved, huge, huge amounts of money to pay off people to get them, in transportation. They just have power, tremendous power. And just think it's from what I know about the mafia, one of the few times they cooperate,
Yeah,
country to country.
yeah,
The Yeah, because but you always know who owns them by the tattoos.
yeah. You just
Yeah,
have to look for it. And then, as you even said, I think there's like stories I have heard where you're seeing the little girls that are wearing these like dilapidated clothes, and they're looking malnourished, and it's just, I never knew the part of like that they're going to call them their father or their brother or their cousin, like whatever relative it is. But I
yeah,
have heard the stories of how people have seen girls in places where they look like they haven't eaten in days. They look like they can't dress themselves, and it's just, some are fortunate to where people notice them, that they will say something to get them rescued and saved. But what about those others that they know that notice them and they just walk by and say nothing?
right, right.
It's always in the
Yeah.
back of my head a little bit whenever I hear these stories, is what about those ones that notice that something is off, but they don't do anything to help?
Yeah, yeah, it's a tough problem. They're either afraid of getting involved or if they made a mistake, can they be
Hmm.
sued? Very, very difficult situation. And certainly none of it helps these women and children. But there are signs I notice now in airports. There are very inconspicuous signs on,
Yeah,
yeah, that say, watch for, these are the signs to watch for.
I have seen those. Yeah,
Yeah,
I have
right.
seen those.
So, you're not really looking for it. And it's a real tough problem with, I don't know, with no end in sight.
Yeah.
Uh,
I will say that we definitely need to talk about this more. I would love to talk about this more on my show, and bring this more to the forefront, because it just doesn't get discussed enough. And whenever I do have that conversation again, I would love to have you back, because
I'd love it.
it,
Yes,
it it's definitely something that we need to continue to speak about, on many different levels, for people, so people can pay attention. And I thank you for spending your half hour with me talking about this important subject. Yes, we were talking about the book, but this is a part of the book, and
yeah,
this is a huge issue that is happening in our society, in our world, that we as humans either don't pay attention to, don't want to pay attention to, and we just don't talk about it enough.
yeah.
And I was very happy to discuss this with you. So thank you for that. Wrapping up, where can people find your book? You said Amazon is the one place where they can get your book.
The Cha-Cha Babes Dance with the Devil. That's the sequel. The other book was The Cha-Cha Babes of Pelican Way, which takes place in Florida, with Florida being character in and of itself. And this book, The Cha-Cha Babes Dance with the Devil, is in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
It's set in Philadelphia. And I want to thank you for your bravery in having me. It's not an easy subject. You're the hero. I really thank you.
It's not, and when you're watching people who do talk about human trafficking, it's never easy for them to discuss it. It's not easy for anyone to discuss it, but it has to be discussed.
Yes. Yeah.
And I thank you for opening that door, for having me discussing it, and also learning more about it, because I'm still learning about it. There's things about it I still don't know of what goes on, and just these little fractions of tidbits that we've gotten in this conversation, I just learned more into it, and there's still more to unpack from it. And
Yeah.
also about what are, as we mentioned a few moments ago, what are the signs that we need to look out for? What is it that we need to see so that way, one, we can prevent it from happening to any child, girl, woman? What can we do as people in order for us to stop and prevent this from happening going forward? And also, what can we do to help, if we can rescue these girls who are in trafficking rings?
Yeah.
It's a tough subject. It's probably a tough answer for most people, and it's, while difficult that it is, it's got to be discussed. And I was very happy that I was able to discuss it, because again, it's not being discussed, and I got the chance to do it, so I was very happy for that.
I thank you. Yeah, and I didn't finish. I think it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, independent bookstores, Apple, and it's on a Kindle, an electronic book, and a softcover book. So, and I tried to keep the prices down as much as possible because I want people to read this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to shout out to whoever that was that reviewed the book and they said they learned something. That's a huge win right there. So the fact that you learned something from this book, especially with the topics that were discussed in the book, that is a huge win, and that's what we want.
Yes.
So please, when you read this book, I hope you take away something from this. And I really hope that whatever it is that you take away from this book, you're going to put it into your life and you're going to do better. That's all we ask for.
I hope so. I hope so. That's my own, little tiny world where if I can do any good, yay.
Yeah.
I sit in front of the computer most of the time, but I just hope that a little education goes a long way about topics that are kept kind of hidden.
Absolutely. Fran, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank
This was
you.
great.
I very much enjoyed talking to you. You made it so easy.
Oh, thank you. You too, especially with something like this. This was a tough subject, but easy to talk about, because
Yeah, yeah.
it's very, what's the word I want to use? It was hard, but we understood the severity of how difficult this was. That's
Okay.
what I wanted to say. I thought there was a word for that, but that's exactly how I wanted to say it.
It does make me feel good. It's heartwarming to know that. Really makes it worthwhile spending all that time editing the book. 25, 30 times,
Yeah,
300 pages. Yeah, but it's just heartening that it does any good at all.
absolutely. Thank you so much again, and I hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
No
You
more earthquakes for us.
right. You think it's a sign? No.
The sign. It's a sign.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Of good, I hope.
Of good. Good things to come. Yes, I will say
Yeah.
that. Good things
And
to come.
thank you. And I'd love to be back on, honestly. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Absolutely. I will make that happen. I got your contact information now, so we'll make that happen.
Good. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Many thanks to Fran Metzman for joining our podcast and discussing the Cha-Cha Babes Dance with the Devil, as well as the serious subject of human trafficking. And if you want to check out her book, you can find it on Amazon. Just search for the Cha-Cha Babes. You can find the first book as well as the latest installment, Dance with the Devil. But that's going to do it for me right now. I appreciate you all taking the time to listen to this topic and on our show. I'm Novell J. Lee, making sure you keep getting the latest buzz with Buzzworthy Radio by logging onto our website at buzzworthyradiocast.com. You can also find us on X at Buzzworthy Radio and liking us on our Facebook page. We're also on Amazon Music as well as iHeartRadio. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.